Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, you all know that a few days ago in Louisiana, they decided not to bring charges against the officers who killed Alton Sterling. And for those of you who are familiar with this channel, you know that I've done videos about Alton Sterling's case. And at the time when I did the videos, the only information I had is what most of us saw on the news, the video footage. And I will include links to the video footage in the description box. Also, I will include a link to an article that has video of the DA basically explaining why they decided not to press charges against the officers involved. Basically, they were saying that in a criminal case, you have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And here, they didn't have the evidence to bring that case. And they also cited a report which I have read most of it. It's a report from the Louisiana Department of Justice. And I want to talk about this report and just talk about the lessons that can be learned from this situation. First of all, although it's difficult to say, I think in this case, the DA made the right decision not to bring charges, unfortunately. And it's a tragic situation because you have a father that's dead, a spouse that's dead, his children are without their father now because of this unfortunate incident. But this situation is not the same as an Eric Garner or even a Stephen Clark. This is not the same type of situation. Here you have a situation where Alton Sterling was threatening somebody with a firearm. And this person who was threatened called the police, and the police arrived on the scene. And actually, one of the police officers pulled out a gun on Alton Sterling and pointed it towards his head and told him to put his hands on the car or to go against the car or something like that so that he could basically frisk him and take any weapon from him. Because there again was a report that Alton Sterling was threatening people with a gun. So Alton Sterling motions as if he's going to go to the car, and then he resists the officers. The officers try to restrain him. They actually try to tase him 2 times. And they spot the gun. They can see the gun. First of all, there's the report that he has a gun. They can see a gun. And they're trying to restrain him. His hands are out of their control. Like he doesn't put his hands down. He's reaching for something. And while he's pinned down, like most of us, we can't see it in the video. But according to the reports, he was actually reaching for the gun in his pocket. And they did, in fact, recover a gun at the scene. He was reaching for the gun, and that officer proceeded to shoot and kill him. Now, they also did an autopsy, and they had information about his gun wounds and all that kind of stuff, but they also had information about the drugs that were in his system. This man had over, I think it's like 5 different substances in his body at the time. So this is a guy who was tased. The police told him to stop. The police tried to restrain him. And throughout this whole situation, this man was resisting the whole time. And according to, the police officers and some witnesses, he was actually reaching for the gun in his pocket. And, the reason why this toxicology thing is important is because it tells you a lot about his state of mind. It tells you about, like, his reasoning capabilities at the time when this took place. Here you have a man who's being told repeatedly to stop resisting, to stop doing this, to stop doing that. Here you have a man who, despite being in the presence of police that have a gun, one of the officers had a gun pointed at him, they're yelling at him and this and that, he is still resisting, and he does in fact have a weapon, and it is reasonable for any officer under those circumstances to fear for their safety and for their life. So his judgment was impaired. I mean, anybody that has a normal mind or, normal reasoning skills, anytime a police officer has a gun aimed at you and he's instructing you to stop or to stop resisting and all that kind of stuff, common sense at that point kicks in and you stop resisting and you comply with the instructions of the officer. Or you shouldn't even resist, period. But this guy had all these drugs in his system. He had cocaine, he had methamphetamine, He had, what else did they say? Opioids, cannabinoids. So this man had a lot of stuff in his system. He had amphetamines in his system as well. So when you're doped up on all this stuff, all these substances, your state of mind is going to be totally messed up. You're not going to comply with reasonable instructions and stuff like that, and you're going to end up like him, dead. And then the sad thing about this is not the first time that this man has threatened somebody with a gun. You know, there was a prior incident where he had a semi-automatic 9mm handgun and he was threatening somebody else. And he was arrested and charged for aggravated assault, possession of a stolen firearm, and resisting arrest. So this is not the first time that this man has resisted arrest. So just under these circumstances, I completely understand why no charges were brought against him. This is not the situation of a Trayvon Martin or Eric Garner or, you know, these other cases of Walter Scott. This is not the same situation. You know, unfortunately, this man made some very poor decisions that resulted in him losing his life. So most people weren't surprised by the outcome of this. You know, I don't think that this is the kind of situation that warrants outrage, you know, in terms of protest and all that kind of stuff, or, you know, rebellion and stuff like that. I don't think that that's warranted in this Alton Sterling case. And it's no coincidence that you don't see massive rallies and all that stuff taking place following this decision there. Because this is not a case of, unfortunately and tragically, this is not a case where there's injustice. Here you have a case of somebody who's done this before, threatened people before with a weapon, somebody that posed a threat. You know, the police arrive on the scene, and their mindset is in terms of like protecting people in this case. You know, this is a man who threatened somebody. This is a man who's armed. This is a man who's dangerous, frankly. And this is a man who was not complying with any of the officers' instructions or anything like that. And unfortunately, that led to his death. And it's unfortunate that his own lifestyle, his own poor decisions resulted in him dying. So, you know, and the only reason why I'm doing this video, ordinarily I wouldn't even do this video, but the fact of the matter is I did some prior videos where I stated my position just based on the video footage that I saw. And so I needed to correct the record, because this is not in the same category as all those other cases where people are actually victims of police brutality. This is a situation where this man made some unfortunate decisions, and they resulted in him being dead. They resulted in, you know, his children being without their father because of his decisions. And I just had to correct the record because I did a prior video where I, you know, was calling for justice for Alton Sterling. And I did that just based on the video, because in the video, our view is obstructed. You have the police officers basically covering up Alton Sterling's body, so we can't see what he's reaching for. We can't even see that he had a gun, and the information about the gun came out a little bit later, after the incident, you know, after the shooting and stuff like that. It was revealed a little bit later, you know, that this man had a gun, so he was dangerous. And he had threatened somebody, so the police basically acted appropriately here. I mean, somebody could have got shot. I mean, this guy could have threatened somebody else with the gun. I mean, he could have shot somebody or threatened somebody else with the gun. I mean, this guy was on a path towards his own self-destruction. And this whole situation just makes me think about some basic common sense advice that we need to give our people about how to interact with the police. And before I even get into that, you know, obviously you can comply with the police and all that and still be a victim of police brutality. Obviously, the onus is not on the people. You know, obviously the police need to improve their policing practices and deal with, you know, systemic issues of racism in these police departments. But at the same time, there are things that each and every one of us can do to avoid situations like this. Number one, I mean, people need to leave drugs alone, man. Drugs destroy your judgment. Drugs destroy your body and your mind and your spirit. So we need to stop. People need to stop using drugs. That's one thing. Another thing that's real simple is don't be a criminal. Don't engage in criminal activity, because if you're not engaged in criminal activity, you're less likely to have encounters with police officers. That's just common sense. A lot of times in these situations, people are engaged in criminal activity, and that's what brings the police to interact with these individuals. So, that's just basic. Don't engage in criminal activity. And I know that just because somebody engages in criminal activity, that doesn't get a police a license, obviously, to engage in police brutality. Obviously, you all know my track record on here in terms of my commentary. Another thing is comply with reasonable instructions from the police. As long as you don't listen to the instructions of the police, you are inviting a situation of police violence. You are inviting a situation where you're charged with resisting arrest. If the police tell you to put your hands up and all that kind of stuff, or put your hands on the vehicle and all that kind of stuff, just comply with it. You have certain rights. If the police stop you in your vehicle, you have the right not to consent to a search. You can let them know that. And then if they do conduct a search anyway, your legal rights are still protected, because you could assert those rights in court. Now, often the police racially profile people, and, obviously I understand that. I talk about that all the time on here. There are times when the police harass people and are verbally abusive in their language and stuff like that. But the point of the matter is, you should comply with the police's instructions, and that way you can walk away from the event alive, so that you can voice your complaint instead of having someone else voice it for you after the fact. So it's better to walk away from the situation alive than dead. And like this attorney pointed out on Roland Martin's program, you got to think about your safety when you interact with these police. I mean, you got to assume the worst. I mean, how many more examples of police brutality do we need to see before we understand that these police don't have our best interests at heart? Sometimes they are looking for any excuse to kill a black man. Don't give them that excuse. Don't make it easier for them to kill you. And another thing is, don't run from the police, man. Running from the police is stupid, because basically what they do, that makes them assume that you're guilty of something, so they're pursuing you when you run from them. And sometimes police will fire upon somebody who is running from them. They will claim that they were fearing that you were running to get some weapon or something like that. They will come up with all kinds of excuses to justify your slaughter, to justify your killing and stuff. So, I mean, these are just some basic things that most people are taught by their parents about how to interact with these cops, man. Don't make sudden movements around these cops. And if the police stop you while you're in your vehicle, whatever, you had a mount in your car for your cell phone, put it up and cut on your cell phone so you can capture the interaction. And when you interact with these police, pay attention to badge numbers, pay attention to the police car numbers, and document that down. Write that information down, document it as soon as possible, so that after your interaction with the police, you can report that officer for violating your rights. So that's just some basic stuff. Again, this is a horrible tragedy, but it's unfortunate that this man's poor decision making resulted in him being killed, man. So anyway, tell me what y'all think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I mean, you all know that I'm committed to this issue of police, fighting police brutality. But in this case, this is not a case that we need to be rallying around at this point. And I encourage people to read this report, to read it. I'll include a link to an article that has the report in it. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. I hope you have a great day.